Orgasms of the gods. You might find Isis in your ovaries and Osiris in your testicles, at least metaphorically or linguistically, or however is most appropriately stated. Well, we'll figure that out with the following speculation. Was probably mostly influenced by the type of etymological linguistic studies that Ralph Ellis does. He's the author of a book called Jesus, Last of the Pharaohs, and he set out to attempt to decipher the Egyptian language and made some interesting points that, even though I didn't fully understand them, I found the parts that I did understand interesting enough to pursue my own speculation with language. And one of the things that happened was in looking at the Christian Bible, and the very first book is called Genesis. And immediately, because of looking at Egyptology, remember Ralph Ellis's book is called Jesus, Last of the Pharaohs, and of course pharaohs are the Egyptian rulers, or were historically. And they also had a very large respect for their gods. They were a polytheistic people, the Egyptians. And some of their most popular gods are Isis and Osiris. And just looking at the word Genesis, I saw the name Isis. It just immediately was apparent to me that maybe the name Isis is in that word Genesis, the first book of the Bible. And of course, I even made this connection because the book by Ralph Ellis is called Jesus, Last of the Pharaohs, and of course Jesus becomes a well-known figure in the New Testament. So I didn't think I was stretching too much more than somebody else already had, except my speculation was a bit different, and I uncovered something that I have never seen anyone uncover before in the language. And Isis, her attributes, and one of the things she's worshipped for is being a goddess of fertility and birth and life, and she's associated with March, around March 20th, March 22nd, 322, and all of that. And so the word gene, right, Gene in Genesis means to produce or start, which is, again, like life and birth. And so to me, automatically, I made the connection that Genesis was referring to Isis. I also recall, because I speak 3 other languages that use the Roman lettering, Spanish, Brazilian Portuguese, and English, I also know that sometimes adjectives in words are in a different order than they would be in English. For example, if I were in English, I say black cat. In Spanish, you say gato negro. Oh, actually, that was Portuguese. But you say, in Spanish, you say gato negro, right? So it's cat black. And so I just looked at that and thought, I wonder if that works the same with this. So Genesis, or gene of Isis, right, could be translated to Isis gene, right? And I also knew that Isis was a Greek rendering of the older Egyptian names. And one of the older Egyptian names of Isis would be related to the sun god Ra, which is Ast-Ra. And so if it's the gene of Isis, or right? Genesis or Isis gene, but her name is Astra and not Isis, then it would be Astra gene or Astra's gene, which immediately when I said that, because I study a little bit of biology, reminded me of the word estrogen, ostrogene. Now, I know that that sounds like I'm stretching a lot, that I'm far-reaching with these linguistic connections. But the next thing that dawned on me inspired me to think that maybe I wasn't so far off, because I had also been familiar with an appliance company called Oster, or Oster, spelled O-S-T-E-R. And one of the things about the logo for the company Oster is that in the O, there's a four-pointed star that extends throughout from the O and throughout the other letters in the logo of Oster. Now, this wouldn't be such a big deal. I would not have made such a connection if it wasn't not only for that, but the fact that much of the ancient god worship was sun worship, solar deities. Ra is a sun god, and so we have Ost Ra, right? And so because of that, I made that connection. And when I looked at the word Oster, there was nothing that needed to be changed or fit as an ostrogene for Astra's gene to make estrogen. The word Oster, O-S-T-E-R, fits very neatly and perfectly inside testosterone. So there you have now another a very interesting coincidence that makes it even more likely that this connection is actually related to these things, is that it very neatly fits that the female goddess, right? The female god or goddess, Genesis, Isis gene, ostrogene, estrogen, fits with the female hormone of estrogen. And the male god, Oster, Osiris, that is, fits in testosterone. And so, just to give a little bit of background on that, the name Osiris is also a Greek rendition of the older Egyptian name, which is something like Oster or Ostra, right? Where you have Astra, you have Ostra or Oster, right? And so you can see how these names, one male, one female, interestingly, coincidentally, fit into the male and female hormones, respectively. Starting with Genesis, gene of Isis, Isis gene, ostrogene, and Osiris, Oster, testosterone, and the relationship there. So there are so many coincidences in the linguistics, but also in the symbolism. As I pointed out earlier, that these deities, Ostra, right, are all related to the sun god Ra, which is a solar deity. And they all have stars attributed to them. And just the fact that the logo for the company Oster, which happens to have that name in it, O-S-T-E-R, has a four-pointed star in its logo. So all of these things together made for a compelling argument in my mind to hypothesize that these things were actually intended to be that way, that the female hormone in biology called estrogen is actually named after Astra's gene or Isis's gene or the gene of Isis, and testosterone is named after the male god osterone. And we have a lot more evidence that shows how these words have trickled down into English, because we have so many words that are related to that, like Oster and oyster, which are related to the word Easter, which is the east star. And even in Spanish, you have este for east and oeste for west. And it's also like that in the other Romanized languages. And you have other renditions, like there's an older god, Ishtar, right? And then one that came later, Esther, and they're all related. Esther, Easter, oyster, oeste, este, Ishtar. The holiday Easter, right? And East Star, right? Like the star in the O of Oster. And so many of these fascinating linguistic coincidences in the etymology of these words, in my understanding, make for a compelling argument that these are related. And it was just a little bit of fun to call the name of the article that I wrote about this, Orgasms of the Gods. And that was partly inspired by authors who had, like Arthur C. Clarke, and who had, I think, and I'm not sure if it was him, but there's books called like Chariots of the Gods and things like that. And so all of those connections there made it very apparent that there's something going on. And actually, it's my mistake. It's Eric von Daniken who wrote Chariots of the Gods and different books that had, the word God, something of the gods in it, right? And so this was Orgasms in the Gods, or Orgasms of the Gods, which was my title of my article, because of course, the male and female reproductivity, and women are mostly known for estrogen or oestrogen, and men are mostly known for testosterone or testosterone. And so there's a compelling case for those things being related. And why wouldn't it trickle down from the ancient religions into medicine and biology and the naming of words? All of those words are related. There's even some compelling arguments that the ancient Egyptian language seeded many of the other languages. So the ancient Egyptian language also is responsible for the creation of Hebrew and Arabic, and later on for Greek. And Greek then became, is responsible for and influential upon Latin. And you can see a lot of these things and similarities. For example, in Hebrew, the first letters in their alphabet, you have Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. Whereas in Greek, you have Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, all beginning with the same sounds. Aleph, Alpha. Bet, Beta. Gimel, Gamma. Dalet. Right? Delta. So it shows that there definitely are connections there. And there's also been some research that has shown that Arabic shares many linguistic similarities with Spanish. And of course, it's not too far of a stretch to understand, if you listen to it or even look at it and read it, that Spanish is related to Italian, and Italian comes from Latin. It's actually the closest thing to Latin. So if you look at it in this order, you could see you have Latin, then Italian, Spanish, then Portuguese and French. And then, of course, before Latin, you could have Greek, before that Hebrew, before that Arabic, before that Egyptian. And so there's a definite lineage. And even the English language is made up of all of those languages and more. There are hardly any words in the English language that aren't made up of other languages. And there's so many similarities. Like, for example, you look at the word city in English. If you just put a DAD at the end, you have the word in Spanish, cidade, and in Portuguese, cidade, and so on and so forth. And our medical language is mostly made up of Latin and Greek. And if you look at so many words in English, you'll see those influences. So there is some compelling arguments for the orgasms of the gods.